Sorry for the delay, I've been very busy on the farm. And now, the 12th installment of The Gunslinger, Dark Tower Series Book 1 by Stephen King. Narrated by The Laughing Ogre. The climb became grimmer on the following day as they continued to angle toward the narrow V of the pass through the mountains. The gunslinger pushed slowly, still with no sense of hurry. The dead stone beneath their feet left no trace of the man in black, but the gunslinger knew he'd been this way before them. And not only from the path of his climb, as he and Jake had observed him, tiny and bug-like from the foothills. His aroma was printed on every cold downdraft of air. It was an oily, sardonic odor, as bitter to his nose as the aroma of devil grass. Jake's hair had grown much longer, and it curled slightly at the base of his sunburnt neck. He climbed tough, moving with sure-footedness and no apparent acrophobia. As they crossed gaps or scaled their way up ledged facings. Twice already he'd gone up in places the gunslinger could not have managed. Jake had anchored one of the ropes so that the gunslinger could climb up hand over hand. The following morning they climbed through a cold, damp snatch of cloud that began blotting out the tumbled slopes below them. Patches of hard, granulated snow began to appear nestled in some of the deeper pockets of stone. It glittered like quartz, and its texture was as dry as sand. That afternoon, they found a single footprint in one of these snow patches. Jake stared at it for a moment with awful fascination, then looked up frightfully, as if expecting to see the man in black materialize in his own footprint. The gunslinger tapped him on the shoulder and then pointed ahead. "Go. The day's getting old." Later they made camp in the last of the daylight on a wide, flat ledge to the east and north of the cut that slanted into the heart of the mountains. The air was frigid. They could see puffs of their breath, and the humid sound of thunder and the red and purple afterglow of the day was surreal, slightly lunatic. The gunslinger thought the boy might begin to question him, but there were no questions from Jake. The boy fell almost immediately into sleep. The gunslinger followed his example. He dreamed again of the dark place in the earth, the dungeon, and again of Jake as an alabaster saint with a nail through his forehead. He awoke with a gasp, instinctively reaching for the jawbone that was no longer there, expecting to feel the grass of that ancient grove. He felt rock instead, and the cold thinness of altitude in his lungs. Jake was asleep beside him, but his sleep was not easy. He twisted and mumbled inarticulate words to himself, chasing his own phantoms. The gunslinger laid over uneasily and slept again. They were another week before they reached the end of the beginning. For the gunslinger, a twisted prologue of 12 years from the final crash of his native place and the gathering of the other three. For Jake, the gateway had been a strange death in another world. For the gunslinger, it had been a stranger death yet. The endless hunt for the man in black through a world with neither map nor memory. Cuthbert and the others were gone. All of them gone. Randolph, Jamie DeCurry, Ellen, Susan, Martin. Yes, they had dragged him down, and there'd been gunplay, and even that grape had been bitter. Until finally only 3 remained of the old world. 3 like dreadful cards from a terrible deck of tarot cards. Gunslinger, Man in Black, and Dark Tower. A week after Jake saw the footstep, they faced the Man in Black for a brief moment of time. In that moment, the gunslinger felt he could almost understand the gravid implication of the tower itself, for that moment seemed to stretch out forever. They continued southwest, reaching a point perhaps halfway through the Cyclopean mountain range, And just as the going seemed about to become really difficult for the first time, above them, seeming to lean out, the ice ledges and screaming buttes made the gunslinger feel an unpleasant reverse vertigo. They begun to descend again along the side of the narrow pass, an angular, zigzagging path that led them toward a canyon floor where an ice-edged stream boiled with salty, headlong power from higher country still. On that afternoon, the boy paused and looked back at the gunslinger, who had paused to wash his face in the stream. "I smell him," Jake said. "So do I." Ahead of them, the mountains threw up its final defense, a huge slab of insurmountable granite facing that climbed into cloudy infinity. At any moment, the gunslinger expected a twist in the stream to bring them upon a high waterfall in the insurmountable smoothness of rock. Dead end. But the air here had that odd magnifying quality that is common to high places, and it was another day before they reached that great granite face. The gunslinger began to feel the dreadful tug of anticipation again, the feeling that it was all finally in his grasp. Near the end, he had to fight himself to keep from breaking into a trot. Wait. The boy had stopped suddenly. They faced a sharp elbow bend in the stream. It boiled and frothed with high energy around the eroded hang of a giant sandstone boulder. All that morning they had been in the shadow of the mountains as the canyon narrowed. Jake was trembling violently and his face had gone pale. "What's the matter?" "Let's go back," Jake whispered. "Let's go back quick." The gunslinger's face was wooden. "Please." The boy's face was drawn and his jawbone shook with suppressed agony. Through the heavy blanket of stone they still heard thunder, as steady as machines in the earth. The slice of sky that they could see had itself assumed a turbulent, gothic gray above them as warm and cold currents met and warred. "Please, please." The boy raised a fist as if to strike the gunslinger's chest. "No." The boy's face took on wonder. "You're going to kill me. He killed me the first time, and you're going to kill me now." The gunslinger felt the lie on his lips. He spoke it. "You'll be all right." And a greater lie. "I'll take care." Jake's face went gray, and he said no more. He put an unwilling hand out, and he and the gunslinger went around the elbow bend. They came face to face with that final rising wall and the man in black. He stood no more than 20 feet above them, just to the right of the waterfall that crashed and spilled from a huge, ragged hole in the rock. Unseen wind rippled and tugged at his hooded robe. He held a staff in one hand. The other hand he held out to them in a mock gesture of welcome. He seemed a prophet, and below that rushing sky, mounted on a ledge of rock, a prophet of doom, his voice, the voice of Jeremiah. "Gunslinger, how well you fulfill the prophecies of old! Good day and good day and good day!" He laughed, the sound echoing even over the bellow of the falling water. Without a thought, and seemingly without a click of motor relays, the gunslinger had drawn his pistols. The boy cowered to his right and behind, a small shadow. Roland fired 3 times before he could gain control of his traitor hands. The echoes bounced their bronze tones against the rock valley that rose around them, over the sound of wind and water. A spray of granite puffed over the head of the man in black. A second to the left of his hood, a third to the right. He had missed cleanly all 3 times. The man in black laughed, a full, hearty laugh that seemed to challenge the receding echoes of gunshots. "Would you kill all your answers so easily, gunslinger?" Come down, the gunslinger said. Answers all around. Again, that huge, derisive laugh. It's not your bullets I fear, Roland. It's your idea of answers that scares me. Come down. The other side, I think, the man in black said. On the other side, we will hold much counsel. His eyes flicked to Jake, and he added, just the two of us. Jake flinched away from him with a small, whining cry, and the man in black turned, his robe swirling in the gray air like a bat wing. He disappeared into the cleft of the rock, from which the water had spewed at full force. The gunslinger exercised grim will and did not send a bullet after him. Would you kill all your answers so easily, gunslinger? There was only the sound of wind and water, sounds that had been in this place of desolation for 1,000 years. Yet the man in black had been here. After these 12 years, Roland had seen him up close, spoken to him, and the man in black had laughed at him. On the other side we will hold much counsel. The boy looked up at him with dumbly submissive sheep's eyes, his body trembling. For a moment the gunslinger saw the face of Alice, the girl from Tall, superimposed over Jake's, the scar standing out on her forehead like a mute accusation, and felt brute loathing for them both. It would not occur to him until much later that both the scar on Alice's forehead and the nail he saw spiked through Jake's forehead in his dreams were in the same place. Jake seemed to catch a whiff of his thought, and a moan was dragged from his throat. But it was short. He twisted his lips shut over it. He held the makings of a fine man, perhaps a gunslinger in his own right if given time. Just the two of us. The gunslinger felt a great and unholy thirst in some deep unknown pit of his body, a thirst no wine could touch. Worlds trembled almost within reach of his fingers, and in some instinctive way he strove not to be corrupted, knowing in his colder mind that such strife was vain and always would be. It was noon. He looked up, letting the cloudy, unsettled daylight shine for the last time on the all too vulnerable son of his own righteousness. No one ever really pays for it in silver, he thought. The price of any evil, necessary or otherwise, comes due in flesh. Come with me or stay, the gunslinger said. The boy only looked at him mutely, and to the gunslinger, in that final and vital moment of uncoupling from a moral principle, he ceased to be Jake and became only the boy, an impersonality to be moved and used. Something screamed in his windy stillness. He and the boy both heard. The gunslinger began, and after a moment Jake came after. Together they climbed the tumbled rock beside the steely cold falls and stood where the man in black had stood before them. And together they entered in where he had disappeared. The darkness swallowed them. And next time, one of my favorite parts of this book, The Slow Mutants. I will have this out by Tuesday. Thank you once again for joining me as we read The Gunslinger Dark Tower Series Book 1 by Stephen King, narrated by your ever-loving, blue-eyed, laughing ogre.